deception. Maxwell Thorne was not a man who believed in coincidences. As the founder of Apex Security Systems, a private military contractor that specialized in high-risk operations, he had built his life around anticipating threats. His company provided protection for diplomats in war zones, extracted hostages from terrorist cells, and secured valuable assets for clients who couldn't trust conventional security forces. At 42, Maxwell had the hardened physique of someone who regularly trained alongside his operatives and the calculating mind of a tactician who had survived 3 tours in special forces before building his empire. His marriage to Veronica had started, as many do in his circles, an attraction born at a charity gala where she'd been working as an event coordinator. Veronica Lambert had been 25 then, with ambitions beyond her modest upbringing in rural Pennsylvania. Her striking beauty with dark auburn hair and emerald eyes made heads turn, but it was her sharp wit that had caught Maxwell's attention. They married within a year, and their son Liam was born 2 years later. For 8 years, Maxwell divided his time between overseas operations and his family's sprawling estate outside of Portland. He believed he had achieved what few in his profession managed: a successful business and a stable family life. Liam idolized his father, collecting toy soldiers and begging for stories about Maxwell's classified missions, which Maxwell carefully sanitized for his son's ears. But the foundation of their life together had begun to crack 6 months ago, when Maxwell noticed subtle changes in Veronica's behavior. Phone calls that ended abruptly when he entered a room. Late nights allegedly spent with her friend Denise. Unexplained withdrawals from their joint account that she attributed to personal investments. Maxwell had dismissed his suspicions as paranoia, a hazard of his profession where threat assessment was second nature. That morning, before they left for their weekend trip to the coast, Maxwell had kissed Veronica goodbye as she packed the final items for their vacation. She'd seemed distracted, checking her phone repeatedly. "Everything okay?" he'd asked, as Liam loaded his backpack with comic books and handheld games for the 3-hour drive. "Just confirming our reservation," she'd replied, though her smile hadn't reached her eyes. Their drive along the coastal highway had been mostly silent, with Liam absorbed in his game in the back seat and Veronica unusually focused on the road. Maxwell had been reviewing security protocols for a new contract in his mind when Veronica suddenly accelerated on a curved section of highway. "Slow down a bit on the curve," he'd cautioned, noticing they were approaching a semi-truck coming from the opposite direction. What happened next played in slow motion in Maxwell's mind as he drifted in and out of consciousness in the hospital bed. Veronica hadn't slowed down. Instead, her grip had tightened on the wheel, her knuckles whitening as she deliberately veered into the oncoming lane. The last thing Maxwell remembered was lunging for the wheel, the horrified blast of the truck's horn, and Liam's terrified scream from the back seat. Now, 3 days later, Maxwell opened his eyes to the sterile white ceiling of Portland Memorial Hospital, the steady beep of cardiac monitors mixing with the muffled sobs coming from beside his bed. As his vision focused, he saw Veronica, her face buried in her hands, her shoulders shaking with what appeared to be grief. His body felt like it had been crushed, with his right leg elevated and immobilized, bandages wrapped around his torso, and a dull throbbing in his head that suggested a serious concussion. "Dad," the small voice came from his other side. Maxwell turned his head slowly, pain shooting down his neck, to see Liam in a wheelchair beside the bed, his arm in a cast and bandages covering a nasty gash on his forehead. Veronica's head snapped up at the sound of Liam's voice. "Oh, thank God, you're awake," she exclaimed, quickly wiping tears from her face and reaching for Maxwell's hand. "The doctors weren't sure when you'd come around." Maxwell tried to speak, but his throat was parched. Veronica quickly offered him water through a straw, her hand trembling slightly. "What happened?" Maxwell croaked after taking a painful sip. "You don't remember?" Veronica's voice quavered. "A truck veered into our lane on the curve. You tried to swerve away, but we went off the road. The car rolled down the embankment." She squeezed his hand, fresh tears falling. "They said you saved us. If you hadn't grabbed the wheel when you did." As Veronica continued her tearful explanation, Maxwell felt a small hand grip his. Liam had wheeled closer, his eyes wide with fear. The boy glanced nervously at his mother, then leaned in close to Maxwell's ear. "Dad," Liam whispered, his voice barely audible. "She didn't swerve. She aimed for the truck." The boy's hand tightened on Maxwell's, trembling. And she has someone waiting outside to finish the job. Maxwell's military training kicked in, preventing his face from betraying his shock. Instead, he squeezed Liam's hand in acknowledgement and managed a weak smile for Veronica. "I need to rest," he murmured, closing his eyes as if drifting back to sleep. Behind his eyelids, Maxwell's mind raced. The pieces fit together now: Veronica's strange behavior, the unexplained withdrawals, the secretive phone calls. Someone was waiting to finish what Veronica had started. And his son, his 8-year-old son, had somehow figured it out before he had. As Maxwell feigned sleep, he could hear Veronica's phone vibrate. "I need to take this," she whispered to Liam. "Stay with your father. I'll be right back." The moment the door closed behind her, Maxwell's eyes snapped open. "Liam," he said urgently but quietly, "I need you to tell me everything you know, right now." Chapter 2. Revelations and Betrayals. Liam wheeled closer to his father's bed, his young face carrying the burden of knowledge no child should bear. "I saw Mom texting with someone named Dominic," he whispered. "She deletes the messages, but I saw her typing to him last week." The boy hesitated, glancing nervously at the door. She said, "I'm still suspicious. Plan B ready after coast trip if needed." Maxwell's jaw tightened. Dominic. The name struck a chord of recognition, though he couldn't immediately place it. "How long have you known about this Dominic?" 3 months, Liam admitted. "I wasn't trying to spy, Dad, but I needed to use her phone to call you when mine died." And a message came through. Tears welled in the boy's eyes. It said, "Miss you. 3 more months, and we'll be free." Maxwell fought to keep his expression neutral despite the rage building inside him. "You're sure about the man outside?" Liam nodded solemnly. "When they brought you in unconscious, Mom went to make a call. I followed her. She was talking to someone saying, he survived, but he's in bad shape. Come tonight, room 412, after the nurse rotation at 2 a.m. The boy's voice quavered. "Dad, I'm scared." "You've done well, son," Maxwell said, his voice hardening with determination. "Now we need to get out of here." He pressed the nurse call button. Within moments, a nurse named Patricia entered, her experienced eyes taking in Maxwell's alert condition. "Mr. Thorne, good to see you conscious. How are you feeling?" "Like I've been hit by a truck," Maxwell replied dryly. "Which apparently I almost was. I need to speak with my doctor immediately about a transfer." Patricia's brow furrowed. "A transfer? But you've just regained consciousness, and your injuries are serious, I know," Maxwell interrupted. "But I have reason to believe my family may still be in danger from the individuals responsible for our accident." The partial truth came easily. "I need to speak with Dr. Keller immediately and contact my security team." The nurse hesitated, then nodded. "I'll page Dr. Keller. But Mr. Thorne, moving you in your condition would be extremely risky." "I've taken worse risks, Patricia," Maxwell replied grimly. And succeeded. After the nurse left, Maxwell turned back to his son. "Liam, I need you to be brave for a little longer. When your mother returns, act normal. Don't let her know what you've told me." Liam nodded solemnly as Maxwell reached for his phone on the bedside table, relieved to find it still had power. He sent a text to a contact simply labeled Castle, checkmate scenario. Portland Memorial, room 412. Full team necessary. Familial complication. The response came within seconds, assets mobilizing. ETA 45 minutes. By the time Veronica returned, Maxwell had managed to sit up slightly in his bed, masking the excruciating pain this caused. "The doctor says I might be able to go home sooner than expected," he lied smoothly, watching her reaction. A flash of panic crossed Veronica's face before she composed herself. "That's wonderful news, but shouldn't you stay under observation? Your injuries are serious, Max." "I've arranged for private medical care," Maxwell replied, studying her. "We'll all be safer at home." "Of course," Veronica agreed too quickly. "I'll go make arrangements then, pack up some things from the house." She bent to kiss his forehead, a gesture that now felt like an assassin's touch to Maxwell. As she straightened, Maxwell grasped her wrist, not hard, but firmly enough to convey meaning. "No need. I've already contacted my team. They'll handle everything." Something darkened in Veronica's eyes. Calculation, perhaps, or fear. "Your team? But they're halfway around the world on that Azerbaijan contract." Maxwell allowed himself a thin smile. "Not all of them, Veronica. Never all of them. After she left with promises to return with food, Dr. Keller arrived to evaluate Maxwell. The physician was adamant against a transfer until Maxwell mentioned 2 words: Operation Sidewinder. The doctor's opposition immediately evaporated, as Maxwell knew it would for someone on the company's payroll, and discharge paperwork was initiated. When the door to his room opened again 30 minutes later, Maxwell tensed, but relaxed upon seeing a large man with close-cropped silver hair enter. Victor Russo, Maxwell's head of operations and oldest friend from their Special Forces days, surveyed the room with practiced efficiency before approaching the bed. "You look like hell, Max," Victor said by way of greeting. "Feel worse," Maxwell replied. "We have a situation, Vic category black." Victor's expression hardened at the code for internal betrayal. "Details. Veronica tried to kill me and Liam. Deliberately drove toward an oncoming truck. She has an accomplice named Dominic, who's planning to finish the job tonight." Maxwell glanced at Liam, who sat quietly absorbing the adult conversation with remarkable composure. "My son overheard their plans." Victor processed this without visible reaction, though Maxwell detected the slight tightening around his eyes that signaled controlled rage. Victor had been Liam's godfather and had always treated Veronica like family. "The team's securing the perimeter. Cooper's running hospital surveillance now," Victor reported. "We move you in 20 minutes to the safe house in Forest Park." "What about Veronica? Let her think she still has the upper hand," Maxwell decided after a moment's consideration. "I want to know who Dominic is and what they're planning." "And the boy?" Victor asked, glancing at Liam with concern. "He stays with me," Maxwell stated firmly. "Veronica's already shown she's willing to sacrifice him. I won't give her another chance." As Victor coordinated with the team, Maxwell beckoned Liam closer. "I didn't want you to learn about my work this way, son," he said quietly. "But I need you to understand something. What your mother did," his voice hardened, "I will never forgive. Never. But I promise you this. You will always be safe with me." Liam looked up at his father, his young eyes showing a maturity beyond his years. "I know, Dad. I heard her on the phone with Dominic last month. She said I was collateral damage." His voice broke on the words. White-hot fury surged through Maxwell, but he channeled it into cold, calculating focus, the state of mind that had kept him alive in dozens of hostile situations. "Then she'll learn what real collateral damage looks like," he promised softly. By the time Veronica returned, the room was empty except for a nurse who informed her that her husband and son had been transferred to another facility for security reasons. The nurse handed her a note with an address. Unknown to Veronica, the address led not to her husband and son, but to a surveillance team waiting to see exactly who would show up with her. Chapter 3: The Hidden Adversary. The Forest Park safe house was one of Maxwell's most closely guarded secrets, a modernist structure nestled deep within Portland's urban forest, designed to appear as an architectural showpiece while functioning as a fortress. Accessible only by a private road with multiple security checkpoints, the house featured bulletproof windows, reinforced walls, and enough supplies to sustain occupants for months. Maxwell sat propped up in the master bedroom's hospital bed his team had procured, reviewing security footage from cameras they'd installed in his hospital room after his departure. Beside him, Liam slept fitfully on a cot, sedated by the team's medic to help him cope with both his physical injuries and psychological trauma. Victor entered with a tablet displaying 4 camera views. "We've got movement," he announced, placing the tablet on Maxwell's lap. Veronica arrived at the decoy location 30 minutes ago. She wasn't alone. The footage showed Veronica entering what appeared to be an abandoned warehouse with a tall, athletically built man whose face was partially obscured by a baseball cap. They were met by a third individual, a woman with platinum blonde hair cut in a severe bob. Maxwell leaned forward, ignoring the pain in his ribs. "Can we get a better angle on the man?" Victor tapped the screen, switching to another camera. The man turned, revealing a face that caused Maxwell's blood to run cold. "Dominic Reeves," Maxwell whispered, recognition dawning. "Son of a bitch. You know him?" Victor asked, though his tone suggested he already suspected the answer. "Former Army intelligence, specialized in covert operations," Maxwell confirmed grimly. "He applied to join Apex 4 years ago. I rejected him personally." His eyes narrowed as he watched the interaction on screen. His psych evaluation showed sociopathic tendencies. Too unstable for our type of work. And the blonde? Victor inquired. Maxwell studied the woman more carefully. I don't recognize her, but get Cooper to run facial recognition. As they watched, the warehouse scenario unfolded like a theatrical performance. The woman, clearly playing the role of a nurse, informed Veronica and Dominic that Maxwell and Liam had been moved to a secure recovery facility as a precaution following the accident. Veronica performed convincing outrage and concern, demanding to know where her husband and son had been taken. She's good, Victor commented. Almost had me convinced. 8 years of marriage to a security specialist, Maxwell replied flatly. She learned how to lie convincingly. He watched as Dominic placed a comforting hand on Veronica's shoulder, the gesture intimate and familiar. How long has this been going on, I wonder? According to initial data mining, their digital communication began approximately 14 months ago, came a voice from the doorway. Cooper, Apex's cyber intelligence specialist, entered with his own tablet. They were careful, used encrypted messaging apps, burner phones, the works. But nobody's perfect. What have you found? Maxwell asked. Money transfers starting 11 months ago from an offshore account to a shell company registered to Veronica under her maiden name, Cooper reported. Total of just under $5 million. The source of those funds is still being traced, but preliminary findings suggest multiple origins, professionally laundered. Maxwell's expression darkened. This isn't just a love affair. They're being paid. There's more, Cooper continued. Dominic Reeves has been living under the alias David Reynolds for the past 3 years. He's been working as a security consultant for Meridian Technologies. Meridian, Maxwell repeated, the name igniting recognition. Meridian Technologies was Apex's chief competitor, run by Harold Winters, a former CIA operative with a reputation for ethical flexibility. Winters had attempted to acquire Apex 3 years ago, an offer Maxwell had flatly rejected. So this is corporate espionage with a personal twist. Victor's phone buzzed. After checking the message, he looked up grimly. The blonde is confirmed as Natalie Beck, former DARPA psychological operations specialist. Currently employed by Meridian, Maxwell finished. Winters is trying to eliminate me and destabilize Apex before making another acquisition attempt. But why involve Liam? Victor asked, glancing at the sleeping boy. The kid's no threat. Maxwell's expression grew colder. Because Winters knows my contingency plan. If anything happens to me, my shares automatically transfer to a trust controlled by Liam, with you as executor until he's 25. The trust agreement explicitly forbids selling to Meridian or any of its subsidiaries. So both of you had to die for Winters to have a chance at Apex, Victor concluded, disgust evident in his voice. And Veronica would inherit my personal fortune, Maxwell added. Enough to disappear with her lover and start a new life. They fell silent as they watched the footage of Veronica and Dominic leaving the warehouse, their body language suggesting frustration but determination. Before getting into their car, Dominic pulled Veronica close, kissing her with possessive intensity. Maxwell closed his eyes briefly, tamping down the visceral rage that threatened to overwhelm his tactical thinking. When he opened them again, his gaze was glacial. Cooper, I want everything on Dominic Reeves, Natalie Beck, and Harold Winters. Every vulnerability, every secret, every pressure point. Maxwell turned to Victor. And I want our best surveillance on Veronica. I need to know who else is involved. What about Apex headquarters? Victor asked. If this is corporate warfare, they might target the company directly. Implement blackout protocol, Maxwell ordered, referring to their highest security contingency. Rotate all field teams to secondary assignments, secure the R&D servers, and activate ghost accounting. As far as anyone knows, I'm still in critical condition with an uncertain prognosis. Victor nodded and left to execute the orders. Cooper lingered, appearing hesitant. Something else? Maxwell prompted. I found messages indicating they have a fallback plan, Cooper revealed. Veronica mentioned something called Operation Phoenix. It's scheduled to activate if their primary plan fails. Find out what Phoenix is, Maxwell commanded. And Cooper, he fixed the cyber specialist with an intense stare. I'm only going to say this once. The people who did this, who were willing to kill my son as collateral damage, will receive no mercy from me. Whatever you find, Whatever you need to do to uncover their plans. You have my full authorization. No limits, no rules of engagement. Understood. Cooper nodded solemnly. Understood, sir. After Cooper left, Maxwell carefully moved to sit beside Liam's cot. In sleep, the boy looked so much younger than his 8 years, the bandages on his head a stark reminder of how close Maxwell had come to losing him. He gently brushed a strand of hair from Liam's forehead. I promise you, son, he whispered, his voice barely audible. They will pay for what they've done. All of them. As if sensing his father's presence, Liam stirred slightly, murmuring something in his sleep. Maxwell leaned closer to hear. Don't trust Uncle Victor, Liam whispered, before drifting deeper into sedated sleep. Maxwell froze, the words hitting him like a physical blow. His oldest friend, his most trusted ally. Could Victor also be compromised? He forced himself to consider the possibility with cold logic. Victor had full access to Apex's operations. He knew about the trust for Liam. He was one of the few people aware of the Forest Park safe house. Carefully, Maxwell reached for his secure phone and sent a text to another contact, one even Victor didn't know about. Potential castle compromise. Activate Shadow Protocol. Confirmation required. The response came almost immediately. Shadow active. Watching the watcher, Maxwell leaned back against the headboard, his mind working through scenarios and contingencies. The betrayal ran deeper than he had imagined. But now he knew the game, and Maxwell Thorne had never lost a game when he knew the rules. As the night deepened around the fortress in the forest, Maxwell began to plan his counterattack. They had tried to take everything from him. Now he would show them why that had been their most fatal mistake. Chapter 4. Shadows and Pawns. 3 days passed in the Forest Park safe house. Days in which Maxwell's body began the slow process of healing while his mind worked with razor-sharp precision. Liam remained by his side, the boy's resilience astonishing considering the trauma he'd endured. During the day, they played chess, Maxwell teaching his son the finer points of strategy and sacrifice, while at night, after Liam was asleep, Maxwell coordinated a web of surveillance and counterintelligence that was slowly revealing the full scope of the conspiracy against him. Victor had been acting normally, giving no indication he was aware of Maxwell's suspicions. But Maxwell had not survived as long as he had by taking unnecessary risks. Shadow Protocol meant that every communication Victor sent or received was now being monitored by an operative known only as Rook, a woman whose identity was concealed even from most of Apex's senior leadership. On the 4th morning, as Maxwell was reviewing surveillance reports in the safe house's command center, his secure phone buzzed with a message from Rook. Confirmation obtained. Castle compromised. Evidence transferred to Secure Server Alpha 7. Awaiting instructions. Maxwell's jaw tightened. So it was true. Victor was involved. He quickly accessed the secure server from his tablet and found audio recordings of 3 phone calls between Victor and Harold Winters, the CEO of Meridian Technologies. The most recent, from just 2 hours earlier, was damning. Thorne suspects something. Victor's voice, tense and low. He's implementing blackout protocol. That complicates things, Winters replied smoothly. What about the boy? With him constantly. I can't get close enough for a clean extraction. Then we move to Phoenix. Is the team in position? Yes. But Phoenix means no plausible deniability. Harold, are you sure you want to risk it? $500 million in government contracts says yes. You'll get your 20% as agreed. Just make sure there are no loose ends this time. The call ended, leaving Maxwell with cold clarity. Victor's betrayal stung, but it was now just another variable in the equation. More concerning was this Phoenix operation, which appeared to be imminent and apparently involved extraction of Liam. Maxwell sent instructions to Rook to maintain surveillance on Victor, but take no direct action yet. Then he summoned Cooper to the command center. The cyber specialist arrived looking exhausted but determined. I've identified Operation Phoenix, he reported without preamble. It's bad, sir. Really bad. Cooper pulled up schematics on the main display screen. Meridian has a Black Ops team positioning for a raid on this safe house tonight. Their objective is to eliminate you, stage it as a murder-suicide, and extract Liam, who would then be rescued by Veronica as the grieving mother. How did they find this location? Maxwell demanded. Victor, Cooper confirmed grimly. He accessed the security protocols last night, transmitted the defensive schematics to an encrypted server. They know everything. Entry points, security systems, personnel rotations. Maxwell absorbed this with cold calculation. How many in the strike team? 8 operators. Ex-military, mostly dishonorable discharges. The kind with no moral compass. Cooper hesitated. Sir, we should evacuate. Now. No. Maxwell decided after a moment. That's exactly what they expect. We use this. He stood carefully, his injured body protesting the movement. They think they know our defenses, our capabilities. Let's show them how wrong they are. Over the next several hours, Maxwell orchestrated a complete reconfiguration of the safe house's security systems, implementing protocols even Victor didn't know existed. Additional Apex operatives loyal to Maxwell personally, men and women who had been with him since before the company's founding, were covertly brought in through an underground access point that wasn't on any official blueprints. As evening approached, Maxwell sat with Liam in the boys' room, which had been converted into the most secure chamber in the house. I need you to be brave again tonight, Maxwell told his son, helping him into a lightweight Kevlar vest disguised as a normal shirt. Some bad people are coming, but I promise they won't get anywhere near you. Liam nodded solemnly. Because of Uncle Victor? He asked quietly. Maxwell studied his son, once again struck by the boy's perceptiveness. Yes. How did you know he couldn't be trusted? Liam looked down at his hands. I heard him talking to Mom once. They didn't know I was there. He said something about contingencies and that I wouldn't be hurt if everything went according to plan. The boy's eyes, so like Maxwell's own, met his father's with unexpected hardness. But I knew he was lying. His eyes were wrong when he said it. Maxwell felt a surge of pride mixed with sadness that his son had been forced to learn such harsh lessons so young. Always trust that instinct, he told Liam. Now, I need you to stay in the panic room until I come for you. No matter what you hear, no matter what happens, you stay there. After securing Liam in the concealed panic room behind a bookshelf in the bedroom, Maxwell joined his assembled team in the command center. 12 operatives, his most trusted, awaited his orders. On the monitors, thermal imaging showed 8 figures approaching the perimeter of the property through the dense forest. Victor's ETA? Maxwell asked the room at large. 20 minutes, reported a woman monitoring communications. He's maintaining his cover, acting like he's coming to check security as planned. Maxwell nodded. Perfect timing. Let them breach first. Victor should arrive just in time to see his plan fail. He turned to the team. Non-lethal measures only, until they prove lethal force is necessary. I want prisoners for questioning. As the strike team approached, Maxwell watched their movements with the detached analysis of a veteran tactician. They were good, moving with coordinated precision, avoiding most of the regular security measures. But they were following an outdated security schematic, which Maxwell had altered significantly in the past hours. The first indication the attackers had that something was wrong came when they triggered a series of non-lethal containment measures, advanced technology that Maxwell had developed for hostage extraction situations. 4 of the 8 were immediately incapacitated by targeted sonic weapons and gas deployments. The remaining 4 split up, clearly trying to adapt to the unexpected resistance. Maxwell watched as his team methodically contained the threat, 2 more attackers subdued as they attempted to breach the east entrance. The final 2 proved more formidable, making it to the main floor of the house before encountering Maxwell's personal security detail. Just as the situation was being controlled, Victor's car appeared on the perimeter cameras. Maxwell straightened, adjusting the sling supporting his injured arm. Right on cue, he murmured. Bring him in, but carefully. He doesn't know we're aware. Victor entered the command center with the confidence of a man who believed his deception was still intact. His expression shifted from controlled neutrality to shock as he took in the monitors showing the captured attackers. What the hell happened? He demanded, doing an admirable job of appearing concerned. Operation Phoenix happened, Maxwell replied calmly, turning to face his oldest friend and betrayer. Or should I say, failed to happen. Victor's hand twitched toward his sidearm, but froze as he found himself covered by multiple weapons. Max, I don't know what you're talking about, he attempted, his voice leveled despite the bead of sweat forming on his temple. Save it, Vic, Maxwell said coldly. I have the recordings of your calls with Winters. I know everything. How long you've been feeding him information, your role in the accident, the planned extraction of my son. He stepped closer, his voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. What I don't know is why. 20 years of friendship, and you sell me out? For what? Money. Something in Victor's expression cracked. Not just money, he admitted, his pretense evaporating. Leverage. Winters has my daughter. Maxwell blinked, genuine surprise momentarily replacing his cold rage. You don't have a daughter. Not one you knew about, Victor replied bitterly. Grace. She's 19. Her mother and I. It was before I met you. Winters found her 3 years ago, used her to get to me. A flash of desperate rage crossed his features. What would you have done, Max? If it was Liam? I wouldn't have tried to murder my friend's child to save my own, Maxwell answered without hesitation. There's always another way. Victor's shoulders slumped in defeat. Not with Winters. You don't know what he's capable of. Oh, I'm learning, Maxwell assured him grimly. And now, you're going to tell me everything else I need to know. By the time dawn broke over Forest Park, Maxwell had obtained a full confession from Victor, along with critical intelligence about Winters' operation, Dominic's role, and Veronica's involvement. The captured strike team members had also yielded valuable information under interrogation, including the location where Victor's daughter was allegedly being held. Maxwell stood by the window of the command center, watching the first light filter through the trees, his expression unreadable. What now, sir? Cooper asked quietly, joining him. Victor's daughter is being verified and located as we speak, Maxwell finished. If she exists and is being held as he claims, we'll extract her. He turned to face Cooper. But make no mistake, that doesn't absolve Victor. He made his choice. And Veronica? Dominic. A cold smile touched Maxwell's lips, one that didn't reach his eyes. They believe their plan is proceeding. Victor's last official act will be to inform them that Operation Phoenix was successful, that I'm dead, the safe house destroyed, and Liam is being held at a secondary location awaiting rescue. Cooper's eyes widened slightly. You're setting a trap. I'm finishing this chess game, Maxwell corrected. And in chess, sometimes you sacrifice a piece to secure checkmate. He glanced at the monitor showing Victor in a secure holding room. Even if that piece was once your knight. As he spoke, a notification appeared on Maxwell's secure phone. A message from Rook. Grace Russo confirmed. Location verified. Extraction plan ready. Maxwell nodded to himself. He would save Victor's daughter because it was the right thing to do, and because Liam would want him to. But Victor had crossed a line from which there was no return. The same line Veronica had crossed when she aimed their car at an oncoming truck with their son in the back seat. Prepare the next phase, Maxwell ordered. It's time to meet with my wife. Chapter 5, Webs of Deception. Veronica Thorne entered the luxurious suite at the Sentinel Hotel in downtown Portland with cautious optimism. Victor's message had been clear. Maxwell was dead, the mission successful despite complications. Now she was to meet the team that had extracted Liam, who would be handed over to her as the grieving widow and mother. The perfect cover as she disappeared with Dominic and her son to start a new life, $5 million richer. The suite appeared empty when she entered, but the balcony doors were open, curtains billowing slightly in the evening breeze. Veronica set down her purse and moved toward the balcony, her designer heels clicking on the marble floor. Hello? She called, an edge of nervousness in her voice. Victor said you'd be expecting me. He wasn't lying about that, at least, came a voice that froze her in place. Maxwell stepped in from the balcony, moving with the careful precision of a man still healing from serious injuries, but very much alive. He wore a tailored suit that concealed most of his bandages, his arm no longer in a sling though he held it slightly rigid against his body. Veronica's face drained of color. Max, she whispered, her mind racing to process this devastating development. They told me you were dead. Maxwell finished, his voice devoid of the warmth it had once held for her. That was the plan, wasn't it? First the accident on the coastal highway. Then Operation Phoenix, when that failed. Her training kicked in, the years of carefully constructed deception allowing her to gather herself. Max, I don't know what you're talking about. I've been worried sick about you and Liam. Victor said there was another attempt on your life, that you'd been moved for safety. Stop, Maxwell commanded quietly, the single word cutting through her protestations like a blade. The performance is unnecessary. I have recordings of your conversations with Dominic. I know about the offshore accounts. I know everything, Veronica. She stared at him, calculation replacing shock in her eyes. Where's Liam? Safe, Maxwell replied simply. Far from you. Veronica took a step forward, her posture shifting subtly. Whatever you think you know, Max, you don't have the full picture. Dominic and I, yes, we're involved, I won't deny that. But this conspiracy you're imagining isn't imaginary, Maxwell interrupted again. Tell me, was it your idea or Winter's to include our son as collateral damage? Veronica flinched at hearing her own words quoted back to her. She quickly recovered, her expression hardening. You were never supposed to be harmed, Max. Not at first. The original plan was just information, corporate intelligence that Dominic could pass to Meridian. Until Winters wanted more than intelligence, Maxwell surmised. He wanted Apex itself. He made an offer you should have accepted 3 years ago. Veronica shot back, dropping all pretense now. Your stubborn pride cost us our future. Our future, Maxwell repeated with soft incredulity. Was that before or after you decided to murder me and our son? Veronica's eyes flashed with something. Not remorse, Maxwell noted, but frustration. Liam was never supposed to be in the car that day, she admitted. The plan was for just you and me on that trip. He was supposed to stay with his friend Tyler for the weekend, but the playdate got canceled at the last minute. She straightened, a strange defiance entering her posture. It was too late to abort. We had to proceed. The cold calculation in her words, discussing their son's planned orphaning as if it were a minor logistical hurdle, solidified something in Maxwell's chest. Any lingering doubt about what needed to be done vanished. You aimed for that truck knowing he was in the back seat, Maxwell stated flatly. Dominic and I would have given him a good life, Veronica insisted. Once we were settled, once things cooled down. Enough, Maxwell cut her off, disgust evident in his voice. Where is Dominic now? Veronica's gaze darted briefly to her purse on the side table. Maxwell noticed the almost imperceptible movement. Is he listening? Maxwell asked, nodding toward the purse. Waiting nearby for your signal, perhaps? The slight widening of Veronica's eyes confirmed his suspicion. Maxwell moved to the purse, keeping Veronica in his peripheral vision, and removed her phone. It was unlocked, a text conversation with D visible on the screen. The last message sent read, in the room now. All clear. Your backup plan, Maxwell observed, setting the phone down. Always have contingencies. I taught you that, didn't I? A thin, humorless smile crossed his face. Unfortunately for Dominic, his contingency has been delayed. Even as he spoke, Maxwell's secure phone vibrated once in his pocket. The signal that Dominic Reeves had been intercepted by Maxwell's team as he'd attempted to enter the hotel through a service entrance. Veronica's composure cracked slightly. What have you done with him? Nothing yet, Maxwell assured her. He's being held securely, just like Victor. Victor? Genuine confusion crossed Veronica's features. What does Victor have to do with this? Interesting, Maxwell thought. So Winters had compartmentalized his operation. Veronica and Dominic hadn't known about Victor's involvement. Victor has been working for Winters for years, he explained, watching her reaction carefully. He facilitated Operation Phoenix, but had a change of heart at the last minute. This was a lie, of course, but Maxwell wanted to see how Veronica would respond to the suggestion of betrayal within betrayal. The flash of fear in her eyes told him what he needed to know. Winters never told us, she murmured, almost to herself. All this time, Harold doesn't trust anyone completely, Maxwell pointed out. Not even his valued assets. Veronica's expression hardened again. What happens now, Max? You turn us over to the authorities? Try to explain this tangled web of corporate espionage and murder attempts without destroying Apex's reputation in the process. Maxwell regarded her thoughtfully. Is that what you're counting on? My concern for the company's image? He shook his head slowly. You've forgotten who I am, Veronica. What I did before Apex. The world I come from. For the first time, genuine fear showed in Veronica's eyes. You wouldn't. Wouldn't what? Maxwell asked softly. Wouldn't handle this personally? Outside the system? You targeted my son, Veronica. You and Winters and Dominic conspired to kill an 8-year-old boy for money and corporate advantage. His voice remained level, which somehow made the implied threat more chilling. What do you think I'm capable of in response to that? Veronica took an instinctive step back. I want immunity, she said suddenly. full immunity and witness protection in exchange for everything I know about Winter's operation. Maxwell almost laughed. You're not in a position to negotiate, Veronica. But I am curious. What exactly do you think you know that would be worth your freedom? The calculated gleam returned to Veronica's eyes. Project Lazarus, she said triumphantly. Winter's black book operation. Dominic told me all about it. Weapon systems being developed off the books, sold to non-allied governments through shell corporations. The kind of thing that would interest not just the FBI, but the Pentagon. Maxwell studied her for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Sit down, he finally said, gesturing to the suite's elegant dining table. You're going to tell me everything about Project Lazarus. Every detail Dominic shared, every name, every location. For the next hour, Veronica revealed what she knew, her revelations recorded by hidden devices in the suite. The information was indeed valuable. Evidence of serious violations of international arms treaties that could destroy Meridian Technologies and send Winters to prison for the rest of his life. When she finished, Maxwell stood. Thank you for your cooperation, he said formally, as if concluding a business meeting. Veronica looked up at him uncertainly. So what happens now? Witness protection. Now, Maxwell said calmly, you're going to meet someone. He pressed a button on his phone, and the suite's door opened. A woman in a severe black suit entered, her platinum blonde hair arranged in a familiar bob. Veronica gasped. You're the nurse from the warehouse. Natalie Beck, Maxwell introduced her. Former DARPA, current Meridian employee, and as of an hour ago, cooperating with federal authorities in exchange for reduced charges. Natalie's cold gaze fixed on Veronica. Winters sold you out, she said without preamble. When our strike team was captured, he cut a deal. Everything he knew about you and Dominic in exchange for immunity on the Phoenix operation. That's a lie, Veronica insisted, though uncertainty crept into her voice. Harold would never. He already did, Maxwell interrupted. Just as you were prepared to sacrifice Liam, Winters was prepared to sacrifice you and Dominic. That's how people like him operate, Veronica. That's who you chose over your family. Before Veronica could respond, the suite door opened again, and two individuals in suits entered, displaying federal badges. Veronica Thorne, the female agent announced formally. You're under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder, attempted murder, corporate espionage, and violation of international arms trafficking statutes. She began reciting Miranda rights as her partner moved to handcuff Veronica. You can't do this, Veronica hissed at Maxwell as the agents secured her. You need me to testify about Lazarus. We have Natalie for that, Maxwell replied evenly. And Dominic. And considerable documented evidence recovered from Meridian's servers. He stepped closer, his voice dropping so only she could hear. Your testimony is superfluous, Veronica. You, personally, are superfluous. As the agents led her toward the door, Veronica made one last desperate appeal. Let me see Liam before they take me away, she pleaded. Just once. He's still my son. Maxwell regarded her with cold detachment. You forfeited that right when you called him collateral damage, he said quietly. You will never see him again. After Veronica was gone, Maxwell turned to Natalie, who had watched the proceedings with clinical interest. Your turn, he said. Tell me everything about Harold Winters that isn't in the official records. Natalie's thin lips curved in a predatory smile. With pleasure, Mr. Thorne. Where would you like me to begin? Chapter 6. The Architect Exposed. Harold Winters prided himself on being 3 steps ahead of his competitors. At 57, he had navigated the treacherous waters of private military contracting for over 2 decades, building Meridian Technologies from a modest security consulting firm into a global powerhouse rivaling firms like Apex. His office on the 38th floor of Meridian's Seattle headquarters offered a panoramic view of Puget Sound, a daily reminder of the empire he had built. On this particular evening, Winters was reviewing quarterly projections with his CFO when his executive assistant interrupted with urgent news. Their Phoenix operation in Portland had gone silent. All attempts to contact the strike team, Victor Russo, Dominic Reeves, Natalie Beck, and Veronica Thorne had failed. Winters dismissed his CFO immediately. Get me satellite surveillance of the Forest Park location, he ordered his assistant. And put our extraction team on standby. Before the assistant could respond, Winters' secure line rang. A dedicated channel, used only for the most sensitive operations. He answered with caution. Winters. Hello, Harold. Came the voice he had believed he would never hear again. Having communication difficulties? Winters' blood ran cold, but decades of operating in the shadows had taught him to control his reactions. Maxwell, he acknowledged smoothly. Reports of your demise were apparently exaggerated. Greatly, Maxwell confirmed, though not for lack of trying on your part. Winter's mind raced through contingencies. If Maxwell was alive and calling him directly, the Phoenix operation had clearly failed catastrophically. But how much did Maxwell know? And more importantly, what evidence did he have? I'm afraid I don't know what you're talking about, Winters replied with practiced innocence. Though I am relieved to hear you survived whatever misfortune befell you. A soft, dangerous chuckle came through the line. Still playing the statesman, Harold? Even after your strike team was captured? Even after Natalie, Dominic, and Veronica have all provided detailed confessions about Project Lazarus? Winters stiffened at the mention of Lazarus, Meridian's most classified operation, a weapons development program that operated entirely off the books, selling advanced systems to blacklisted nations through elaborate cutouts. If Maxwell had evidence of Lazarus, the situation was far more dire than he had initially assessed. You're bluffing, Winters tested, his voice betraying no concern. Beck would never talk. Neither would Reeves. They already have, Maxwell countered. But don't take my word for it. Check your email. Winters moved to his computer, keeping the phone to his ear. A new message had just arrived from an anonymous sender, containing a video attachment. He opened it with growing dread. The video showed Natalie Beck in what appeared to be an interview room, calmly and methodically detailing the structure of Project Lazarus, complete with names, dates, and offshore accounts. The information was devastating, enough to trigger federal investigations, international sanctions, and almost certainly criminal charges. This is quite the fabrication, Winters attempted, though his confidence was clearly shaken. Doctored footage won't stand up to scrutiny. That's just a sample, Maxwell informed him. The full package, including financial records, communications, prototype specifications, and client lists, has been secured in multiple locations with automated release protocols. If anything happens to me or my son, if Apex faces any further interference from Meridian, the evidence goes to the Justice Department, Pentagon, and select journalists simultaneously. Winter's mind calculated furiously. What do you want? A meeting, Maxwell replied simply. Tomorrow night. Your office in Seattle. Just you and me. So you can what? Record a confession? Eliminate me? Winters scoffed. If I wanted to eliminate you, Harold, this conversation wouldn't be happening, Maxwell pointed out with chilling calm. Midnight tomorrow. Come alone, or don't come at all. The automated releases are set for 12:01 a.m. either way. The line went dead, leaving Winters staring at the video, still playing on his screen, the systematic dismantling of his most valuable covert operation. For the first time in years, Harold Winters felt the unfamiliar sensation of fear. The following night, Maxwell arrived at Meridian's Seattle headquarters precisely at 11:45 p.m. Security had been instructed to expect him, and he was escorted directly to the executive elevator that would take him to Winters' office on the 38th floor. Maxwell had come alone, as agreed, though alone was a relative term in his world. 3 Apex operatives had already infiltrated the building's security systems, giving him eyes and ears throughout the structure. Cooper was monitoring communications from a secure location, ready to initiate the evidence release if necessary. And the sniper positioned on an adjacent rooftop provided additional insurance. Winters was waiting when the elevator doors opened, standing by the floor-to-ceiling windows that showcased Seattle's glittering nightscape. He turned as Maxwell entered, his silver hair and tailored suit projecting the image of distinguished corporate leadership rather than the architect of multiple murder attempts. You're looking remarkably well for a man who should be dead, Winters observed dryly, gesturing to a chair across from his desk. Drink? No. Maxwell declined, remaining standing. His body was still healing, but he had deliberately left his cane behind, refusing to show any weakness. Winters shrugged and poured himself 2 fingers of scotch. I assume you have terms. I do, Maxwell confirmed. Simple ones. Meridian dissolves its paramilitary division within 30 days. You resign as CEO and divest all shares. You disappear. Retirement, extended sabbatical, I don't care which fiction you prefer, but you never return to this industry. Winters raised an eyebrow. And in return, your Project Lazarus evidence remains secured rather than released. You avoid federal prosecution and likely international tribunals. That's it. Winters asked skeptically. No personal retribution for the attempts on your life? On your son's life? Maxwell's expression remained impassive. I didn't say that. Understanding dawned in Winters' eyes. So the corporate terms are for public consumption. You have additional requirements. Victor Russo had a daughter, Maxwell stated. One you used as leverage against him. Winters sipped his scotch. Grace. Lovely girl. Very talented pianist. She's already been extracted and secured, Maxwell informed him, watching with satisfaction as surprise briefly registered on Winters' face. What I want to know is if there are others, people you're holding against their will or manipulating to maintain control of your operation. Winters considered for a moment, then set down his glass. 3, he admitted. The family of my head of R&D, the son of my operations director in the Middle East, and a rather talented hacker whose sister requires specialized medical care. Names and locations, Maxwell demanded. Now, as Winters provided the information, Maxwell transmitted it directly to Cooper via his secure phone. Extraction teams were already on standby, ready to move once the intelligence was verified. They'll all be free by morning, Maxwell assured him once Winters had finished. Unlike Veronica, Dominic, and Natalie, who are enjoying the hospitality of federal custody. Winters leaned back in his chair, studying Maxwell with newfound respect. You've played this well, he acknowledged. But I am curious. Why allow me to walk away at all? The evidence you have would bury me. Why not use it? Maxwell stepped closer to the desk, his eyes cold. Because public prosecution would risk exposing aspects of Apex operations that I prefer remain confidential. Because lengthy trials attract attention neither of our companies need. He paused. And because there are worse fates than prison, Harold. Such as, Winters prompted, an edge of genuine curiosity in his voice. Living with the knowledge that everything you built has been dismantled. That your legacy is ashes. That the empire you sacrificed everything for, including your basic humanity, was taken from you not by force, but by superior strategy. Maxwell's voice was quiet, but carried unmistakable conviction. You will live a long, healthy life, Harold, watching from the sidelines as others succeed where you failed. Winters' jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. And if I refuse your terms? Maxwell smiled thinly. Then the evidence goes public, and you spend what remains of your life fighting extradition requests from countries where your weapons have been used against civilians. Either way, Meridian as you know it ends tonight. For several long moments, Winters stared at Maxwell, calculation evident in his gaze. Finally, he reached into his desk drawer and removed a flash drive, which he slid across the desk. Contingency files, he explained. Everything on Project Lazarus that your team might have missed. Consider it a gesture of good faith. Maxwell pocketed the drive without comment. You know, Winters said reflectively, in another life, we could have been formidable partners rather than adversaries. In another life, Maxwell agreed, you might not have targeted my child. His voice hardened. You have until noon tomorrow to begin the dissolution process for Meridian's paramilitary division. By the end of the week, I expect your resignation announcement. As Maxwell turned to leave, Winters called after him. This isn't over, Maxwell. Men like us, we don't just disappear. Maxwell paused at the door. For your sake, Harold, I suggest you learn how. As he rode the elevator down to the lobby, Maxwell received confirmation that the extraction teams had successfully located and secured the 3 hostages Winters had identified. By the time he boarded his private jet back to Portland, all 3 were safely en route to secure locations where they would be reunited with their families. Maxwell gazed out the aircraft window at the receding lights of Seattle. The corporate war was won. Meridian would be neutered, Winters removed from power. The individuals directly involved in the attempt on his and Liam's lives were in custody, facing lengthy sentences. Yet as the plane lifted into the night sky, Maxwell felt no satisfaction. Only a cold, resolute certainty that justice had not yet been fully served. The chess pieces had been positioned. The corporate game was concluding. But the personal reckoning was just beginning. Chapter 7. The Price of Betrayal. 6 months after the confrontation in Seattle, Maxwell stood on the private terrace of his New York penthouse, watching autumn leaves swirl in Central Park below. Apex Security Systems had thrived in the wake of Meridian's collapse, absorbing many of its former competitors' legitimate contracts and personnel. Harold Winters had indeed resigned as CEO and disappeared to a remote estate in Montana, where Maxwell's surveillance confirmed he remained isolated and increasingly paranoid. Liam had adapted to their new life in New York with remarkable resilience. The boy attended an exclusive private school where security measures were unobtrusive but comprehensive. Twice weekly, he saw a child psychologist specializing in trauma, and Maxwell had been heartened by the gradual return of his son's smile, his curiosity, his capacity for joy despite all he had witnessed. But tonight, Liam was at a carefully vetted sleepover, and Maxwell was preparing for the next phase of what he privately termed the accounting. On the glass table beside him lay 3 dossiers: Veronica, Dominic, and Victor. 3 betrayals, 3 reckonings still pending. The legal system had processed them with varying degrees of effectiveness. Veronica and Dominic had been convicted of conspiracy to commit murder, along with numerous corporate espionage charges. Veronica was serving 20 years in a federal facility in Colorado. Dominic, whose cooperation had earned him some leniency, was serving 15 years in a medium-security prison in California. Victor's case had been more complicated. In exchange for testimony against Meridian, and in consideration of the coercion involving his daughter, he had received a reduced sentence of 10 years. Grace Russo, now 20, had been relocated to Europe with a new identity and sufficient funds to complete her education at a prestigious music conservatory. Justice had been served in the eyes of the law. But Maxwell operated by older principles, forged in war zones and failed states where official justice was often an empty promise. Those who had conspired to murder his son would face a more personal accounting. "Sir," came a voice from the doorway. Cooper stood there, tablet in hand. "Everything is in place." Maxwell nodded. "And the final verification?" "Confirmed. All 3 targets are where intelligence indicated." Cooper hesitated. "Sir, are you certain this is necessary?" "They're all incarcerated, neutralized as threats." Maxwell turned from the view, his eyes meeting Cooper's directly. "This was never about neutralizing threats, Cooper. This is about consequences." He gestured to the dossiers. "They conspired to murder an 8-year-old boy for profit. The law punishes the crime. I punish the intent." Cooper nodded, not entirely comfortable but loyal nonetheless. "Which one first?" Maxwell considered briefly. "Victor. He was the first to betray us. He should be the first to understand the cost." Within the hour, Maxwell's private jet was airborne, headed toward the Federal Correctional Facility in Pennsylvania, where Victor Russo was serving his sentence. As head of a major defense contractor with necessary security clearances, Maxwell had arranged a private meeting with his former friend under the guise of debriefing him on classified Apex operations that might be compromised. The prison interview room was Spartan but private, no cameras, no recording devices, an arrangement Maxwell had insisted upon for national security reasons and had paid handsomely to ensure. Victor looked older than his 50 years when guards escorted him in, the prison jumpsuit hanging loosely on his frame. He showed no surprise at seeing Maxwell, merely a weary resignation as he took his seat across the table. "I wondered when you'd come," Victor said quietly. "Didn't expect it to take 6 months." Maxwell regarded him steadily. "I had priorities. Keeping Liam safe, ensuring Apex's stability, dismantling what remained of Winter's operation." Victor nodded. "And now? What's the purpose of this visit, Max? Closure? Forgiveness?" His mouth twisted in a bitter smile. "Or something else?" "You know me better than that," Maxwell replied evenly. "I don't forgive betrayal, Vic. Especially not when it involves my son. I never intended for Liam to be harmed." Victor insisted, leaning forward. "I told Winters from the beginning, the boy was off limits. Yet you facilitated an operation designed to eliminate both of us," Maxwell pointed out coldly. "You provided the security schematics for the safe house. You knew what Phoenix entailed." Victor slumped slightly. "I believed Winters when he said Liam would be extracted safely. That Veronica would take custody." He met Maxwell's gaze directly. "I was desperate, Max. He had grace. He showed me videos of what would happen to her, if I didn't cooperate. I saw those videos after we extracted her, Maxwell acknowledged. Convincing work. Which is why you're still alive, Victor. Which is why you received a reduced sentence rather than spending the rest of your life in a supermax facility. He paused. But it doesn't erase what you did. Victor studied Maxwell's expression, recognition dawning. You're not here to talk. You're here to act. What's the plan, Max? An accident in the prison yard? A shanking in the shower? Nothing so crude, Maxwell assured him. I respected our friendship too much for that, despite your betrayal. From his breast pocket, Maxwell removed a small envelope, which he slid across the table. Victor opened it cautiously, withdrawing a single photograph. The color drained from his face as he recognized what he was seeing. No, he whispered. You promised she'd be protected. You gave your word. Grace is perfectly safe, Maxwell confirmed. In Munich, completing her piano studies with Maestro Keller, as she's dreamed of since she was 12. He tapped the photograph. That's not Grace. Victor stared at the image, a young woman who bore a striking resemblance to his daughter, sitting at a cafe in Paris. Then who? Her name is Sophia, an operative recruited specifically for her resemblance to Grace. Maxwell's voice remained calm, matter of fact. Every day for the next 10 years, the duration of your sentence, she will send you a photograph. Sometimes from Paris, sometimes from London, Moscow, Beijing, places where my enemies are numerous and resources plentiful. Horror dawned in Victor's eyes as he understood. You wouldn't. Each day, Maxwell continued as if Victor hadn't spoken. You'll receive that photograph and wonder, is this the day she disappears? Is this the day Maxwell decides the debt is paid in full? You'll study each image for signs of coercion, for hidden messages, for any clue about what might be happening outside these walls. This is psychological torture, Victor protested, his voice hoarse. Yes, Maxwell agreed simply. Just as you tortured me with the fear that my son might be taken at any moment. Just as you forced me to lie awake wondering who else might be compromised, who else might be coming for him. Victor's hands shook as he pushed the photograph away. I'm already paying for what I did. 10 years of my life. You're paying the legal price, Maxwell corrected him. Now you'll pay the personal one. And after 10 years? Victor asked, desperation edging his voice. When my sentence is complete? Maxwell stood, adjusting his suit jacket. If you survive the decade of uncertainty with your sanity intact, you'll be released to find that Grace has been safe all along. That no one ever threatened her. That the fear you lived with daily was fabricated, just as you helped fabricate the threat against my family. As Maxwell turned to leave, Victor called after him. She really is safe? You swear it. Maxwell paused at the door. Unlike you, Victor, I keep my promises. Grace will never know about your betrayal. She believes you're on a long-term classified assignment. Funds are deposited to her account monthly, ostensibly from you. She's building the life she deserves. His voice hardened. But you will spend every day of the next decade wondering if that's true, or if I've changed my mind. That's your sentence for me. He left Victor staring at the photograph, the first installment of a decade-long psychological reckoning. The California sun beat down on the exercise yard of the medium-security federal prison where Dominic Reeves had been incarcerated for 6 months. As a former intelligence operative convicted of corporate crimes rather than violence, he had adapted to prison life with relative ease, establishing himself in the informal hierarchy without drawing undue attention. Dominic was in the middle of his regular workout routine when a new inmate approached, a muscular man with a military bearing and intricate tattoos covering his arms. Reeves, the man greeted him. Got something for you. He handed over a small, tightly folded piece of paper. Dominic warily accepted it. Who's it from? The man merely shrugged. Guy who paid for my sister's cancer treatment. Said you'd understand. As the mysterious inmate walked away, Dominic carefully unfolded the note. Written in a precise hand were just 3 words. Watch the news. That evening, as the common room television broadcast the nightly news, Dominic felt a creeping sense of dread. The feeling crystallized into horror when the anchor reported a breaking story. A massive explosion at a private residence in Malibu had claimed 3 lives, including those of renowned defense attorney Miranda Reeves and her 2 children, ages 7 and 4. The room spun around Dominic as the names of his sister and her children were announced. Miranda, who had nothing to do with his crimes, who had distanced herself from him years ago because she disapproved of his work with Meridian. Her children, whom Dominic had never even met due to the siblings' estrangement. As he staggered back to his cell in shock, another inmate handed him a second note. They died instantly. No suffering. Unlike what you planned for my son. Dominic collapsed onto his bunk, the reality crushing down on him. Maxwell Thorne had struck with surgical precision, eliminating not Dominic himself, but the family he had kept secret from Meridian, from Veronica, from everyone associated with his professional life. The family he had protected by keeping them at arm's length was gone. A life for a life, a child for a child, though Maxwell had been more merciful in execution than Dominic had planned to be. The following morning, Dominic received a final message, this one during a routine meeting with his prison counselor, who slipped him an envelope containing documents that froze his blood. Detailed surveillance photographs of Miranda and her children over the past 6 months. Transcripts of their phone calls. Floor plans of their home with multiple entry points marked. And a handwritten note. I could have taken them at any time. Just as you could have aborted the plan to kill Liam at any time. Remember that for the remaining 14 years, 5 months, and 27 days of your sentence. The evidence was carefully collected before Dominic left the counselor's office, leaving him with nothing but knowledge and grief. The twin punishments Maxwell had designed specifically for the man who had helped plot his son's murder. 3 days later, Dominic Reeves was found hanging in his cell, a death officially ruled a suicide brought on by grief over his sister's tragic accident. The Federal Women's Correctional Facility in Colorado operated on a strict schedule. Veronica Thorne had learned to navigate it efficiently, keeping to herself, speaking only when necessary, and using her intelligence to avoid the conflicts that plagued many inmates. Her 20-year sentence stretched before her like an endless desert, but she had already begun planning for the appeal her new attorneys were preparing. 6 months into her incarceration, Veronica received notice of a visitor, her first since being processed into the facility. The name listed was unfamiliar. Eleanor Brightman, identified as a researcher working on a book about corporate crime. In the visitation room, Veronica found herself seated across from a poised woman in her early 50s, with silver-streaked dark hair and penetrating gray eyes. Mrs. Thorne, the woman greeted her. Thank you for agreeing to meet with me. Veronica shrugged. Breaks the monotony. Though I should warn you, my case is still under appeal. There are aspects I can't discuss. I understand completely, Eleanor assured her with a warm smile. I'm more interested in the psychological aspects of your situation than the legal details. The human story, if you will. For the next 45 minutes, Eleanor asked insightful questions about Veronica's background, her marriage to Maxwell, and her relationship with her son. Veronica found herself speaking more freely than she had intended, something about the woman's manner putting her at ease despite her usual caution. As their time drew to a close, Eleanor closed her notebook. Just one final question, if I may. Do you regret what happened to Liam? The trauma he experienced in the car that day? Veronica hesitated, weighing her response carefully. Of course I regret that Liam was in the car, she said finally. As I testified, he was never supposed to be involved. His presence was an unfortunate complication. Eleanor's warm demeanor cooled slightly. Complication. An interesting choice of words for your son's life. Something in the woman's tone made Veronica study her more carefully. Who are you really? She asked, sudden suspicion sharpening her voice. You're not writing a book. No, Eleanor agreed calmly. I'm not. She leaned forward slightly. My name is Eleanor Thorne. I'm Maxwell's mother. The blood drained from Veronica's face. In 8 years of marriage, she had never met Maxwell's mother, who had retired to a remote property in Montana before their relationship began. Maxwell rarely spoke of her, except to mention that she had raised him alone after his father's death in a military operation. Maxwell doesn't know I'm here. Eleanor continued conversationally. He believes I'm still safely tucked away in my mountain retreat, uninvolved in his affairs. A ghost of a smile touched her lips. My son forgets sometimes that I trained him, not the other way around. Trained him, Veronica repeated, unease crawling up her spine. Before I retired, I spent 30 years with an agency that officially doesn't exist, Eleanor explained. I specialized in psychological operations against high-value targets. Breaking people without leaving marks, you might say. Her gray eyes, so like Maxwell's, Veronica now realized, hardened. My son comes by his talents naturally. Veronica struggled to maintain her composure. What do you want from me? Nothing at all, Eleanor replied pleasantly. I simply came to deliver news that might otherwise take months to reach you through official channels. She paused. Dominic Reeves committed suicide 3 days ago, shortly after learning that his sister and her children died in a tragic home explosion. Shock and grief hit Veronica with physical force. Dominic is dead, she whispered. Eleanor nodded, her expression sympathetic yet unyielding. He chose a quick end. You, however, will not have that luxury. Is that a threat? Veronica demanded, glancing toward the guards who monitored the visitation room. Merely an observation, Eleanor corrected her. You see, I've spent the past 6 months ensuring that every individual responsible for your care in this facility, from the warden to the night shift guards, understands exactly who you are and what you attempted to do to my grandson. Her voice remained conversational, almost gentle, not through bribes or threats, but simply by sharing the truth in ways that resonate with people who have children of their own. Veronica felt a chill that had nothing to do with the room's temperature. What have you done? Nothing that violates any regulation, Eleanor assured her. Nothing that would trigger an investigation or support an appeal. Just conversations. Information shared. Perspectives adjusted. She smiled thinly. You'll serve your full 20 years, Veronica. Every day of it. Without incident. Without cause for complaint. But with the knowledge that every person who hands you a meal, or processes your mail, or monitors your calls, knows exactly what you were willing to do to a child, your own child, for money. Eleanor stood, gathering her belongings. You won't see me again. You won't see Maxwell. And you will never, ever see Liam. She leaned slightly closer. But we'll be watching you, every day, for the next 20 years. That's what family does, after all. They watch out for each other. As Eleanor Thorne departed, Veronica remained seated, a newfound dread settling over her as she looked around the visitation room and noticed, for the first time, the coldness in the eyes of the guards who had previously been professionally indifferent to her presence. 20 years stretched before her like an eternity, each day to be endured under the silent judgment of people who knew her not as Veronica Thorne, corporate sophisticate and convicted white-collar criminal, but as the woman who had aimed her car at an oncoming truck with her 8-year-old son in the back seat. Maxwell's vengeance, delivered through his mother's quiet words, was complete. Chapter 8. Ashes and Rebirth. 1 year to the day after the failed attempt on his life, Maxwell stood beside Liam on a private beach in the Maldives, watching his son's delight as the boy carefully constructed an elaborate sand fortress complete with moats and walls. At 9 years old, Liam had grown both physically and emotionally in the past year. The nightmares that had plagued him after the accident had gradually subsided, though he still insisted on keeping his bedroom door open at night. They had spent the past 2 weeks island hopping across the Indian Ocean on Maxwell's yacht, a vacation planned specifically to coincide with the anniversary of the event that had changed their lives forever. Maxwell's security team maintained a discreet presence, but the isolation of their current location provided a rare opportunity for truly private conversation. Dad, Liam called, looking up from his creation. Come see the defense system I built. Maxwell walked over and crouched beside his son, ignoring the twinge in his right leg, a permanent souvenir from the crash. Impressive, he commented, studying the intricate series of channels Liam had constructed around the main structure. Let me guess, when the tide comes in, these outer moats fill first, giving the defenders advance warning? Liam nodded enthusiastically. And I made the inner wall higher with these shell reinforcements, so even if they get past the moats, there's another layer of protection. Maxwell smiled, recognizing the principles of perimeter security he'd occasionally discussed in Liam's presence. The boy absorbed everything, his mind constantly analyzing, adapting. You've thought of everything. Not everything, Liam admitted, his expression growing more serious. The people inside still need to watch for threats. Defenses only work if you're paying attention. The mature observation hung between them for a moment. Maxwell placed a hand on his son's shoulder. You're right about that. It's a lesson I had to relearn last year. Liam poked at the sand with a small stick, his next question coming quietly. Do you think Mom is sorry for what she did? Maxwell considered his response carefully. He had never lied to Liam about Veronica's actions, answering the boy's questions directly but age-appropriately. Still, he was mindful of the delicate balance between truth and psychological welfare. "I don't know if she's sorry," Maxwell answered honestly, "but I do know she's facing consequences for her choices." Liam nodded, seemingly satisfied with this response. "And the others? The man she was with and Uncle Victor? They're facing consequences too," Maxwell confirmed, deliberately keeping his answer vague. Liam didn't need to know the details of Victor's psychological torture, Dominic's suicide, or the careful social isolation being orchestrated around Veronica. Justice comes in many forms, Liam. Sometimes through courts and laws, sometimes through other means. The boy was quiet for a moment, then asked with unexpected directness, "Did you hurt them? The people who try to hurt us?" Maxwell met his son's gaze steadily. "I ensured they can never harm you again," he said, neither confirming nor denying direct involvement in their fates. "Protecting you is my most important job." Liam seemed to accept this, returning his attention to the sand fortress and adding another tower. "I've been thinking," he said after a while, "about what I want to do when I grow up." "Oh," Maxwell prompted, grateful for the shift to lighter territory. "What are you considering?" "I want to help protect people, like you do," Liam declared, looking up with determination. "But not just with security systems and guards. I want to build things that keep people safe wherever they go." Pride swelled in Maxwell's chest, tempered with a father's natural concern about a child following in potentially dangerous footsteps. "That's a noble ambition," he acknowledged. "We can certainly explore those interests as you get older." As the sun began its descent toward the horizon, painting the sky in vivid oranges and pinks, Maxwell helped Liam fill water buckets to protect his fortress from the encroaching tide. They worked side by side, reinforcing walls and deepening moats in a collaborative effort that felt symbolic of their relationship over the past year, building something stronger together from the ruins of what had been destroyed. Later that evening, after Liam had fallen asleep in their beachfront villa, Maxwell sat on the terrace with a glass of scotch, reviewing secure communications from Cooper about Apex operations. The company had not only weathered the storm of Meridian's collapse, but had emerged stronger, absorbing valuable contracts and personnel while maintaining its ethical standards, something Maxwell had insisted upon despite opportunities to exploit the situation for greater profit. His secure phone vibrated with an incoming call from an unlisted number, one of only 3 people who had access to this particular line. Maxwell answered with caution. "Thorne, it's done," came Eleanor Thorne's crisp voice. Winters took the bait. Maxwell straightened. "You're certain?" "The evidence is already being processed by the Justice Department," his mother confirmed. Anonymous tip with irrefutable documentation linking him directly to arms sales to sanctioned nations. The FBI served search warrants at his Montana property this morning. This had been the final piece of Maxwell's comprehensive vengeance, orchestrated with his mother's help, but without her knowledge of the full scope of his other actions against Victor and Dominic. Harold Winters, who had believed himself safe in his isolated retirement, was about to discover that Maxwell's promise of allowing him to disappear had been the cruelest deception of all. "Any complications?" Maxwell inquired. "None," Eleanor assured him. "The documentation appears to have been leaked by a disgruntled former employee. No connection to Apex or to us personally." She paused. "How's my grandson?" Maxwell glanced toward the villa where Liam slept peacefully. "Healing. Building sand fortresses with strategic defenses. Talking about following in my footsteps someday. God help us," Eleanor remarked dryly, though Maxwell could hear the pride in her voice. "That boy has both our bloodlines. He'll be a force to reckon with." After ending the call, Maxwell sat contemplating the moonlight on the tranquil waters. Tomorrow, financial markets would react to the news of Harold Winters' arrest. Meridian Technologies' remaining assets would likely face liquidation. The final piece of Maxwell's comprehensive retribution would fall into place, leaving no trace of his involvement in any of the fates that had befallen those who targeted his family. But tonight, watching over his sleeping son, Maxwell allowed himself a rare moment of peace. The accounting was complete. The debts paid in full. Those who had conspired against them had learned the most important lesson of all. Some lines should never be crossed, some bonds never betrayed. Maxwell finished his scotch and stood, wincing slightly at the familiar pain in his leg, a permanent reminder of both vulnerability and survival. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new threats to anticipate. The world he operated in never remained peaceful for long. But for now, in this moment, justice had been served in full measure. Not the sanitized justice of courts and legal proceedings, but the more primal justice of consequences precisely calibrated to the crimes committed. No forgiveness, no mercy, only the cold certainty that those who had tried to destroy his family had instead ensured their own destruction. Chapter 9. Unbreakable. 5 years after the accident that nearly claimed their lives, Maxwell watched with quiet pride as Liam, now 13, received the top academic achievement award at Westridge Academy, the prestigious private school in Manhattan where he had thrived since their relocation from Portland. Tall for his age and carrying himself with a confidence that reminded Maxwell of Eleanor, Liam had developed into a thoughtful, analytical young man with particular aptitude for engineering and applied sciences. The awards ceremony concluded with polite applause, and as families dispersed toward the reception in the school's grand hall, Maxwell found himself approached by Headmaster Sullivan, a distinguished educator with whom he had developed a respectful relationship. "Mr. Thorne," Sullivan greeted him warmly. "A moment of your time?" Maxwell nodded, signaling to Liam that he would join him shortly. "Of course, Headmaster. I assume this is about the robotics lab donation." "Partially," Sullivan acknowledged as they moved to a quieter corner of the auditorium. "The board is extremely grateful for your generosity, but I actually wanted to discuss Liam's future academic trajectory." He glanced toward where Liam was chatting animatedly with his robotics team members. "We've never seen engineering aptitude scores like his in a student so young. His latest project, the autonomous security drone with facial recognition capabilities, is frankly beyond undergraduate-level work." Maxwell maintained a modest expression despite the surge of pride. "He's always been mechanically inclined." "This goes well beyond mechanical inclination, Mr. Thorne," Sullivan insisted. "We believe Liam would benefit from accelerated placement in certain subjects, possibly even early college courses through our partnership with MIT." As they discussed the details of Liam's proposed academic advancement, Maxwell reflected on the journey that had brought them to this point. The past 5 years had seen significant changes both personally and professionally. Apex had expanded its operations into cybersecurity and advanced defense systems, becoming the preeminent security firm globally. Maxwell had gradually stepped back from day-to-day operations, focusing instead on strategic direction and, more importantly, being present for Liam's development. The aftermath of the conspiracy against them had played out exactly as Maxwell had orchestrated. Harold Winters had been convicted of arms trafficking violations and was currently serving a 30-year sentence in a federal penitentiary. Meridian Technologies had collapsed, its legitimate assets acquired by competitors, its illicit operations exposed and dismantled. Victor Russo continued to serve his sentence, receiving daily photographs of the Grace lookalike as promised, a psychological punishment that Maxwell monitored but no longer directed personally. The real Grace remained in Europe, her musical career flourishing under her new identity, unaware of her father's true circumstances. Veronica remained in the Colorado facility, systematically isolated through Eleanor's careful manipulation of staff perceptions. Regular reports indicated she had become increasingly withdrawn, speaking to no one, her appeals systematically denied through legal maneuvering that left no trace of Maxwell's influence. Dominic Reeves' suicide had been ruled definitive, the case closed without suspicion of foul play. The accident that claimed his sister's family had similarly been conclusively attributed to a gas leak. The investigation closed within months of the incident. Justice, as Maxwell defined it, had been comprehensive and absolute. "Dad," Liam's voice pulled Maxwell back to the present. "Mrs. Chin wants to talk to you about the summer engineering program." Maxwell excused himself from the headmaster and followed Liam to where the robotics instructor waited with evident enthusiasm. As they discussed the prestigious program that would allow Liam to spend 6 weeks at MIT's Advanced Engineering Laboratories, Maxwell observed the subtle changes in his son, the increased confidence, the articulate way he outlined his project goals, the clear vision he already possessed for his future. Later that evening, as they shared a quiet dinner in their penthouse overlooking Central Park, Liam brought up a subject that had remained largely untouched in recent years. I saw an article today, he said carefully, setting down his fork, about Meridian Technologies and what happened to it. They mentioned Mom and the others. Maxwell set his own utensils aside, giving Liam his full attention. What did the article say? That it was one of the biggest corporate espionage cases ever, Liam replied. But it didn't really explain everything. He hesitated. It didn't say what really happened that day in the car. Those details were kept confidential, Maxwell explained, to protect your privacy and future. Liam nodded slowly. The article mentioned that the man who worked with Mom, Dominic, committed suicide in prison, and that the CEO of Meridian is serving 30 years. His perceptive gaze met Maxwell's. But it didn't mention what happened to Mom, other than that she's serving her sentence. Maxwell maintained a neutral expression. She's in the Colorado facility, as she has been since the conviction. Have you? Liam seemed to struggle with the question. Have you had any contact with her? No, Maxwell answered truthfully. And neither has she attempted to contact us. This was technically accurate. The systematic discouragement orchestrated by Eleanor had ensured Veronica never tried to reach out to her son. Liam absorbed this information silently before asking, "Do you still hate her for what she did?" The directness of the question momentarily caught Maxwell off guard. He considered his response carefully, aware that his answer would shape Liam's understanding of justice, forgiveness, and the nature of consequences. "I don't waste energy on hatred," Maxwell finally said. "But I don't forgive betrayal of that magnitude. What your mother did," he paused, choosing his words deliberately, "crossed a line that can never be uncrossed. She made her choice, and now she lives with the consequences of that choice." "Just like Mr. Winters and Uncle Victor," Liam observed. "Yes," Maxwell confirmed. "Actions have consequences, some more severe than others, depending on the action." Liam was quiet for a moment, processing this. "The security systems I'm designing," he said finally, "they're meant to protect people from harm before it happens. To prevent situations like what happened to us." Maxwell studied his son, recognizing the healing process evident in Liam's ability to channel his trauma into something constructive. "Prevention is always preferable to retribution," he agreed. "Building something positive from negative experience, that takes true strength." "But if prevention fails," Liam continued, his young face serious beyond his years, "consequences must still follow. That's what you taught me." "Yes," Maxwell acknowledged, seeing in his son the perfect balance of his own uncompromising principles and something uniquely Liam's, a constructive vision that looked forward rather than back. Justice and protection, in proper measure. Later that night, after Liam had gone to bed, Maxwell stood on the penthouse terrace, the lights of Manhattan creating a glittering panorama below. His secure phone buzzed with an encrypted message from Cooper, now Apex's CEO. "Winters found unresponsive in cell this morning. Medical examining possible stroke. Prognosis uncertain." Maxwell deleted the message without responding. Whether Winters survived or not was immaterial. The man had already lost everything that mattered to him, just as he had attempted to take everything that mattered from Maxwell. 5 years ago, a conspiracy born of greed and ambition had nearly destroyed Maxwell's family. Those responsible had paid the price, not through random violence or impulsive revenge, but through the careful, methodical justice Maxwell had orchestrated. Each punishment tailored precisely to the betrayal committed. Each consequence delivered with the cold precision that had made him both respected and feared in his professional life. But looking back into the penthouse where Liam slept peacefully, Maxwell recognized that true victory lay not in the retribution he had exacted, but in what had been preserved and strengthened through the crucible of betrayal. His relationship with his son, built now on absolute trust and honesty, had become unbreakable, forged in adversity and tempered by shared survival. The conspiracy had failed. The conspirators had fallen. And from the ashes of betrayal, Maxwell and Liam had emerged stronger, their bond reinforced by the knowledge that they had faced the worst together and prevailed. No forgiveness, no compromise, only justice, delivered without mercy to those who had shown none. And in the aftermath, a future built on the unshakable foundation of a father's protection and a son's resilience. Unbreakable. This is where our story comes to an end. Share your thoughts in the comments section. Thanks for your time. If you enjoy this story, please subscribe to this channel. Click on the video you see on the screen, and I will see you there.